This holiday season, it's time to impress the family by dressing up fancy. And I'm not talking about bow ties, I'm talking about those little chef hat shoes that are all the rage in Turkey Town. Follow this simple tutorial and in no time you will have yourself some incredibly professional looking frills, also known as paper frills, chop frills, poultry frills, paper booties, or manchettes. Frills became popular around the 1800s as a way for upper classes to eat all of their favorite greasy foods that nobody else could afford and keep their fingers fresh. They stayed popular because, well, they're just so dang fancy. All you're going to need is some paper, scissors, glue stick, and a printer if you want to use my handy dandy template. Most tutorials will have you believe that making frills is as simple as cutting a strip of paper and making even cuts all the way down about halfway into the paper from the folded edge, rolling that up, gluing it, and sort of squashing those down to puff them out. And while yes, this does make one type of frill, I just don't think it looks very professional or very good at all. And, if this does it for you, then more power to you. Just go ahead and save yourself some time, make a couple of these, and be done with it. But nothing says fancy to me like these layers of slanted, tiny, delicate little frills on top of a nice, crisp, clean cylinder. I put some on a crown roast that I made for a Harry Potter feast, and they really made the dish look great. As you can see, I needed quite a few of them to just sort of stick onto the end of those ribs. And if you're buying a lot of them, or if you're buying the bigger ones, they can really add up. So I was determined to figure out how to make my own. So I took the liberty of making this beautiful template, which hopefully you can download in the description. The first page has the instructions and one copy with numbers and arrows to help you through the process. The second page has two copies with just the numbers and arrows, and the third page is just the bare bones template itself with two copies. So go ahead and cut it out along the black lines. And no, your printer is not running out of ink or toner. I did make it on a gradient. It gets lighter towards the end that will be on the outside of the cylinder so that none of the text or markings show through on the other side. If you're using other paper or if you just don't want to use the template, you can still absolutely do this. Just cut out a strip that is about 10 inches long by 3 inches high. This shrank a little as a PDF, but you should be able to follow along just by using approximations and eyeballing it. The first step's really easy. You just fold back the top inch or the top third of your strip. You're going to fold it along the line just under the number 1. Next, you're just going to cut along the light gray lines down to the next dashed line, just below number 2. If you're not using a template, these are about 1/2 inch long and about 1/8 of an inch wide. These are going to make our frills, and it's very important that they are as consistent as possible. So you can go ahead and unfold that, and then we want to do step 3, which is just to run a glue stick down the strip between the lines where the number 3 is. In the next step, we're going to be bringing that flap back to the front and shifting it up and to the left. This is going to basically bold and italicize our frills. Like I said, this wants to sit here, but we're going to go ahead and move it over to this little 90-degree mark and glue it down, and then just work your way down, making sure that you're staying along that line, and stick it down nice and good. You'll see this little overhang. It's very important that the glue dries completely in this step before we move on. It might help dry a little bit faster if you just apply a light pressure and run your finger down the seam a few times. This step is optional, but you can run a pencil into the frills and push down on them to just sort of flatten them out and make them a little neater. You can also push the pencil against the outside edge to really make a nice heavy crease and really make that profile that we're looking for. In the next step, we're going to fold the bottom edge at an angle so that as we roll the piece up, the frills at the top are able to form into a spiral while the bottom edge stays flush. It might be easier to go ahead and fold it backwards first so that you can see the line that you're working with, and then fold it back towards the inside. Let's take a second to talk about the paper you're using. The first time I made these, I used these gift bags that are a really thick kind of parchment that's almost got a waxy feel to it, and this worked really great for keeping the grease from bleeding through. As you can see here, with just a little bit of vegetable oil, copy paper becomes transparent pretty easily. Even thicker paper, while it does better, can eventually bleed through. So to fix this, we're going to use some clear tape. So go from number 6 over to the left edge and from the frills down. This is going to create a barrier that the grease cannot saturate. It's time to roll up our frill, and we're going to start from the edge with the 7 on it. This is where you need to decide how big it needs to be. So you might need to go actually measure your piece, or you can use the guides on the template for a general size ranging from like the pork frills that I showed earlier to a turkey leg frill. At the end of the day, you just want a booty that's going to slip nice and snug onto the bone.
That's what she said.
So let's go ahead and roll it up and keep the bottom edge nice and flush, all those layers in line. If one of them does start to slip, you can just sort of pull it back up. Make sure everything is tight and flush, and then just add a little bit of glue to stick the edge down to your cylinder. If you really want to protect it from grease, you can add one more piece of tape along the very bottom edge all the way around the cylinder, and then tuck that to the inside. Or if you'd rather not mess with any of the taping that we've done so far, you could just use some plumber's tape, wrap it a few times around the end of your leg bone or whatever you're putting your frill on, and slip it on. Whatever you're serving up, I hope this was helpful, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, or check out my blog at brainvenomstudio.com.